respect restored. And the man was about to learn exactly what that cost. Bumpy didn't answer right away. That pause, measured, deliberate, did more damage than any threat could have. The man's question hung in the air, unanswered, and with every second that passed, his imagination filled the silence with worse possibilities than words ever could. Bumpy turned his head slightly and looked toward the front window, watching Harlem move past as if this conversation were happening somewhere else. A delivery truck rolled by. A woman crossed the street with a paper bag tucked under her arm. Two boys laughed as they chased each other down the sidewalk. Life. Ordinary. Uninterrupted. That, more than anything, told the man how little control he truly had. "You think this is about what I want?" Bumpy said finally. "That's how men like you survive. You frame everything like a negotiation." He turned back, eyes settling on the man with quiet certainty. "This is about what's owed." The man's jaw tightened. "I don't have much," he said quickly. "I can get money. I can make calls. I know people now." Bumpy shook his head once. Slow. Final. "You still don't understand," he said. "If money could fix this, you wouldn't be sitting here." That truth landed hard. The man had spent years convincing himself that whatever debt remained could be paid off in installments. Cash, silence, cooperation. But Bumpy Johnson had never been a man who confused value with currency. Bumpy pulled out a chair and sat back down across from him, re-establishing the symmetry of the table. Two men facing each other, one carrying 11 years of patience, the other carrying 11 years of borrowed time. "Let me tell you what you did," Bumpy said, his voice even. "Not to me, to Harlem." The man's eyes flicked up, then away again. "When you talked," Bumpy continued, "you didn't just sell information, you sold predictability. You made it harder for people here to know who they could trust." He leaned in slightly. "And when trust disappears," he said, "chaos starts sniffing around the edges." The man nodded faintly. He had seen that chaos from a distance. Headlines, rumors, funerals he avoided attending. He had told himself none of it was his fault, that he'd just been a small piece in a big machine. Bumpy dismantled that illusion calmly. "You weren't small," he said. "You were positioned." The man swallowed hard. That was the truth he'd spent 11 years outrunning. He hadn't been a victim of circumstance. He had been close enough to matter, and weak enough to fold. Around them, tension thickened. A man at the far table quietly stood, placed money beside his coffee, and left without looking back. The waitress finally retreated into the kitchen. No one wanted to be present when the balance tipped. Bumpy noticed all of it without reacting. He always did. "You want to know why I didn't come for you sooner?" Bumpy asked. The man nodded, barely breathing. "Because running men punish themselves," Bumpy said. "Every day they wake up afraid. Every knock sounds like the end. Every friendship feels temporary." He paused. "I let you live with that." The man's shoulders slumped. There were tears now, but he didn't wipe them away. Pride had left the building a long time ago. "But fear alone doesn't teach a lesson," Bumpy continued. "It just keeps men alive." He tapped the table once with his finger, not hard but sharp enough to command attention. "Lessons require witnesses." The man looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" Bumpy held his gaze. "It means you don't disappear again," he said, "and you don't keep pretending you were never here." The man's breathing quickened. "You want me to go to the police?" Bumpy almost smiled. Almost. "No," he said. "I want you to go back to Harlem." The words hit like a physical blow. "I can't," the man said immediately. "They'll know. People will talk. I'll never be safe." Bumpy's voice hardened, not louder, just firmer. "That's what accountability feels like," he said. "Uncomfortable, public, permanent." The man shook his head, panic rising. "You're sending me to die." Bumpy leaned back, folding his hands again. "No," he said. I'm sending you to live honestly. There it was, the core of it. Bumpy wasn't offering revenge. He was offering exposure, a return to the place the man had abandoned, stripped of illusions, stripped of protection. You're going to walk these streets, Bumpy said, with your real name. You're going to look people in the eye. And when they ask where you've been, he paused, letting the weight settle. You'll tell them the truth. The man stared at him, stunned. That's it? Bumpy stood once more. That's everything, he said. He placed a hand briefly on the back of the man's chair, not threatening, not comforting, declarative. Justice doesn't always come loud, Bumpy said. Sometimes it comes with memory. He turned and walked toward the door. As he left, the bell rang again. Same sound as before, but now it meant something different. The man remained seated, shaking, surrounded by the quiet judgment of a neighborhood that never forgot. Outside, Harlem kept moving. Inside, the past had been unburied, and the consequences were just beginning. The man stayed in that chair long after Bumpy Johnson walked out. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Time had a strange way of bending when fear took hold. Eventually, the restaurant began to breathe again. Plates moved, chairs scraped. Someone turned the radio back on, low and cautious, as if sound itself needed permission. But the man didn't move, because now he understood something he hadn't when Bumpy first spoke. This wasn't over. This was the beginning. By nightfall, word was already moving through Harlem, not shouted, not announced, just passed the way truth always was. Quietly, from mouth to ear, from doorway to doorway. A man was back. A man who had once vanished. A man who had been close to Bumpy Johnson and had run. That kind of news didn't need embellishment. People remembered. By the second day, faces started appearing outside the man's apartment. No threats, no shouting, just neighbors pausing longer than necessary. Conversations stopping when he entered a room, eyes that lingered with recognition and judgment. Harlem wasn't cruel, but it was exact, and the man felt every ounce of that precision. On the third day, he saw Bumpy again. This time, it wasn't planned. Bumpy was walking along Lenox Avenue, unhurried, flanked by nothing but the afternoon sun and his own reputation. He nodded to a shop owner, exchanged a word with an older woman on her stoop. The street bent around him naturally, like water around stone. The man stood frozen across the avenue, heart hammering. He hadn't been summoned. He hadn't been warned. And yet, here Bumpy was, fully visible, fully unbothered. Bumpy saw him. Of course he did. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Bumpy didn't stop, didn't gesture, didn't acknowledge him beyond that single knowing look. That look said everything. You're where you belong now. The man realized then what the true confrontation had been. Not the restaurant, not the conversation, but this. Being seen, being remembered, and being forced to live inside the truth he had spent 11 years denying. As the days turned into weeks, the effect deepened. Old associates crossed the street to avoid him. Some stared openly. Others shook their heads in disappointment. A few, braver or crueler, asked questions out loud. You back now? Thought you moved on. Heard you left in a hurry? Each question cut sharper than the last. He answered them. Every time. Because Bumpy Johnson was still watching. Not directly, not visibly, but everyone knew better than to believe Bumpy ever stopped paying attention. The real peak came on a humid evening when a local dispute flared outside a pool hall near 135th Street. Voices rose, accusations flew, the kind of situation that used to spiral fast. The man found himself in the middle of it, recognized, cornered by men who remembered what had happened years ago. Their anger wasn't violent, it was worse. It was righteous. You think you can just come back? One of them asked. After what you did? The man felt the old instinct surge, the urge to lie, to deflect, to run. And then he remembered Bumpy's words. Lessons require witnesses. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "I ran," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I talked when I shouldn't have. People paid for it." The street went quiet. "I don't expect forgiveness," he continued. "I'm not asking for it. I'm just not hiding anymore." No one answered right away. Then a voice came from behind the crowd, calm, measured, unmistakable. "That's enough." Bumpy Johnson stepped forward.